Hello everybody, we're going to talk about some Steam Next Fest games, some of the games that I really enjoyed playing, and we're going to do it while I am fucking sick. Like, I don't feel very good. I feel more like that guy than anything else, so we're kind of just going to be very B-roll heavy in this video, and I apologize for the raspy voice. This was all spearheaded by my interest in Enshrouded. I embarked on a journey over the last few days during Steam Next Fest to test out a bunch of RPGs, pseudo-RPGs, and RTS games that I found interesting. Basically, I tried to find the games that I would find interesting because I thought you might all too. The result was a realization that a lot of these games are either not ready for release but show some polish, or may be worth it at lower price points, or are absolutely horrible. I played some bad games. They're not going to be listed here, but I played some bad games. These are mostly just early observations, and keep in mind many of these games are essentially in alpha or beta states, and the demos are generally short. This is not a final judgment on any of the games here, and with perhaps one or two exceptions, all of them need work before launch. But let's get the big elephant out of the room. Enshrouded itself is too big and too promising to be sandwiched in this video, so I'll be making a video on Enshrouded itself later. These are the games that didn't show quite as much promise as Enshrouded, but were still worth giving a look, or perhaps a wish list if they seem interesting to you. The first game I tried during Steam Next Fest was one I only found out about a few days before. Kristala, a Souls-like from Astral Clock Tower Studios, a woman-owned game studio which far exceeded their original Kickstarter goal of $10,000, amassing $110,000 to bring the dark fantasy action RPG with cats to life. Now, while $110,000 sounds like a lot to you or I, it is an insignificant sum when it comes to making a video game, putting Kristala firmly in the indie game camp. For perspective, Elden Ring reportedly cost around $200 million. That's what, almost a 2,000% more, 2,000% increase? I have no idea. I spent way too much time trying to do math to figure that shit out, and I'm bad at math. There's a reason why I took remedial math when I was in college. But meeting that Kickstarter goal also means that they met key stretch goals, like launching on multiple platforms. Kristala is looking to launch on Steam, Steam Deck, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and the Switch. And after jumping around in the demo for a bit, it's solid but needs work. It's perhaps the game that still needs the most work to be successful, but also felt like it could be good other than perhaps Midevil. The core gameplay is there, but it lacks polish around animations, movement, difficulty, etc. It reminds me of games like Nioh, Wulong, and Elden Ring. If I were to pick a single game it made me think of in its current state, I'd probably edge closer to Nioh, which at this point is a pretty dated game, but with the potential to be more as they continue to develop the game before release. The currently listed release date isn't until Q4 of 2024, so there's time to get the necessary polish in there for the developer to make a bit of a splash with their very first game, and a Kickstarter game at that. It won't be anywhere near Elden Ring, but with enough work and a satisfying risk versus reward that will make Souls-like fans happy, it could be decent. It could be a solid game, especially at a lower price point. The combat is obviously the center point, and it's the part that's been worked on the most. Even on mouse and keyboard, I found it satisfying and responsive. Getting a well-timed block or dodge provides a little hint of dopamine you expect from a Souls-like. There's a healthy dose of fear as well, as things can go bad pretty quickly, though the issues I tended to run into are more about camera angles, which may require some tweaking in the settings to adjust the speed of rotation. Speaking of settings, turn off the damn motion blur. I don't know why games like push motion blur so much. I don't know anyone that actually enjoys motion blur, but it seems to be a setting that a lot of games try and like ramp up. It in some ways it can hide some graphical issues, but damn, like the motion blur was bad. It's really bad. I think the part that I enjoyed most over some other Souls-like was the magic and melee system that Kristala uses. Weaving spells into your melee combat is seamless as your melee feeds your magic, and the magic itself feels very powerful. Especially these later spells I picked up that created an earthquake or whirlwind that decimated enemies. Honestly, the spells may have felt a little bit too powerful. Did I mention that you're a cat? It's not perfect, but the game has solid bones, perhaps some of the best of the demos I played during Next Fest, which might not be saying all that much as there were several stinkers. The game has all the pieces: the dark atmosphere, being a freaking cat, satisfying combat, beautiful music composed by Winifred Phillips, who worked on huge franchises like Assassin's Creed, God of War, Total War, Little Big Planet, and The Sims. Graphically, it looks good, but not great. The armor upgrades you got in the demo look really cool, and the darkness feels suitably ominous. Of the Steamfest Next demos, it was probably one of the prettiest. The parkour elements need a bit more weight to them, but otherwise they're solid and very feline. I mean, just look at how you balance on the wires here. Animations are a mixed bag, with some good and some stiff, but I really like the balance break killing blows, which are wonderfully weighty. If nothing else, this is a game to watch. This next game comes with a huge caveat. Warhammer Age of Sigmar is an RTS, and I really wanted to like it. And there are definitely parts of it that feel worthy of the name Warhammer. There are also parts that feel too limited, too basic, and too stiff. If this RTS was releasing in November of 2024 instead of November of 2023, I'd be more excited about it, because after playing the demo, I feel like it still needs some work. We'll see. Let's talk about the good first. It has incredible music, good cinematics, and an interesting approach to difficulty by basically adding timers to complete the campaign missions. Initially, I got a feel of Warcraft 3 a little bit, but then quickly felt it was more like some kind of map crawl style RTS game, more familiar to people who played Warhammer 40k Dawn of War RTS games. The animations are good and crisp, and I really found that I was enjoying the use of abilities and cycling through them during combat, which made it feel a bit more engaging and active. As you go further into missions, you unlock the ability to create more units and upgrade those units that you already have, which is where the game really starts to shine and feel solid. The campaign missions themselves were interesting, if a bit short and linear. I'm hopeful that the campaign itself will be long, because it really needs to be to justify the price point. More on that in a moment. One of the things I didn't get to try is perhaps one of the more interesting things that Age of Sigmar is going to be doing, and that's the Conquest mode. It is a roguelike element to the RTS that was announced recently that will let you play as all 4 of the Age of Sigmar armies in a single-player score chasing game where you play in a procedurally generated one-on-one mission all over the world map. Part of how they plan to make this interesting is use of rule-breaking twists like different movement speeds, unit vision, and time limits. But let's talk about some of the more negative things. At times, the game feels artificially slow. Capturing bases especially can feel more annoying and takes ages. There may be a tactical reason for this, like encouraging you to split your party up instead of moving in one giant murder ball, seeing as enemies can go and recapture points, but I'm kind of just hoping this is deliberate and not just poor balancing. Besides the gameplay issues, I found the story bland. I felt no connection to any characters through my time in the demo, and overall it just felt very wooden. This could partially be because I so recently played Baldur's Gate 3, which has not only a deep and engaging story, but also beautifully done mocap performances by some incredible actors. But something just felt missing and disconnected. This is where I have to chime in with an opinion that is dissenting from my own, one that's coming from Wargamer, who has played the game more than I have. In their review, Wargamer said the following, which gives me some hope that the story may get better later in the campaign and the demo wasn't showcasing the best. In the 2 Realm of Ruin previews Wargamer has attended so far, we've been struck by the exceptional quality of the storytelling in the game's narrative campaign. That quality may be because the story has been penned in part by prolific Warhammer book author Gav Thorpe. And this is where I come to the final verdict of the game, and probably one actually close to its final verdict because it is launching very soon. The game feels like it's priced way too high. Unless the campaign can deliver on some major upgrades as you progress through it, I do not see much in the way of replayability, and multiplayer and conquest modes alone wouldn't be enough to warrant a $60 price tag. For me, this game would be better off launching at a $20 or $30 price tag, maybe even $40. $60, a premium game price, just feels too much. At those lower price points, I would be more bullish on Age of Sigmar. Our second to last game is Midevil, and Midevil is interesting. It was the first one I played with friends, and the only one I played with friends that actually felt good. It feels like a hardcore survival game that looks like it could find a niche community to enjoy it. Out of all the demos in this video, it's probably my least favorite, but may have wider appeal. The basic premise is you're surviving a medieval world killing zombies and bandits. It's a single co-op or multiplayer RPG where you build, create, and battle it out. I have to admit that in the play session, we mostly avoided any sort of building, and if you look at these trailers, that doesn't seem to be the main goal of Midevil either. Combat is front and center. It felt like a game that is right up your alley if you like to craft gear and slay zombies while exploring a huge world. It includes an experience and skill point leveling system, tons of loot, NPCs, a quest system, companions, and pets, as well as things you'd expect in a survival game like farming, hunger and thirst, day-night cycles, and dynamic weather. And it does all this in a hardcore way. There's no map, no information for others like nameplates. There's no real way to tell if something is going to devastate you or if it's going to be an easy kill. It adds a thrill to the game, but also can be a bit annoying to other players, more used to modern quality of life elements. Personally, I'd at least like a way to tell your friends who your friends are, either with some kind of way to find them in game or some kind of nameplate so you know that you're not trying to kill your friend instead of a bandit. Going back to the lack of building, it honestly felt more beneficial in the game to kill enemy NPCs than to build a base, which would be the usual gameplay loop for a survival game. I got my gear from killing knights and zombies and growing in power that way. And that was my favorite part of the game, the combat, especially the animations. The animations just looked fun, clunky, but fun in a badass but cartoony kind of way. I can see this being a game that's a lot of fun. A survival RPG that doesn't take itself as seriously as Enshrouded will, or later on Nightingale. And speaking of not taking itself too seriously, we've got to talk about Dungeons 4. Perhaps my second favorite game that I played. It is kind of the antithesis of Age of Sigmar. Dungeons 4 is a colorful, tongue-in-cheek romp that caught me by surprise more than once as it wiggled a few laughs out of me, especially in the cutscenes with moments like this.
But this snap, which would go down in the history books as the Dungeon Lord snap, unleashed horrific forces that were discharged into the Dungeon Lord himself. As Tanya rose to her feet, the gauntlet had disappeared, and the Dungeon Lord lay dying. Viewers often began to cry at this point, because it made them think back to the last really good superhero movie.
And this.
And so the story ends. We'll tell you how the story continues in overpriced microtransaction bytes. Oh, wait, wrong script. That's a different developer. Hang in there, I've almost got it.
Like Age of Sigmar, it's an RTS, but unlike Age of Sigmar, it has tremendously detailed base building, or rather, dungeon building, with traps and buildings and chickens. As you set your adorable little snots to work, the game quickly becomes addictive. Dungeons 4 comes from the same developer of Tropico, and as the name may suggest, Dungeons 4 is a sequel in a long-running series. One that I've never actually played before, and I feel like I've been missing out if the demo was any indication. The game is beyond solid, it's polished, it's ready to go, and that's good because it will also be launching in November of 2023. I found the gameplay loop addicting, combining base building including traps and barricades with RTS army building and the destruction of objectives. You quickly learn as you go through Dungeons 4 that there's many things you can be doing all at the same time, whether it's expanding your gold mining reserves or how much evil you are concentrating, or summoning up new enemies, because you will eventually have to go and take out the enemy bosses. And in this first mission that I was doing, I had to go to the Overland and take care of the dwarves on the Overland that were invading my dungeon down below. It really is a fun and satisfying gameplay loop that really just sucks away your time in a way that RTS games tend to do with me, and this shines as a very good RTS game. It's a satisfying loop, and the game doesn't take itself too seriously, poking fun at itself, the genre, and gaming in general throughout. My only concern is it worth $50? But the same could be said for many of the games. Perhaps games like Baldur's Gate 3 have really redefined my expectations of what a premium price game has cost. At least it will be cheaper than Age of Sigmar after all. All that said, this was one of my favorite games throughout the entirety of Steam Next Fest, and the one I put the most time in besides Enshrouded, which you can find in this video here. If it's not there now, then it'll be a video about Enshrouded and what it generally is. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Redbeard Flynn. I'm going to go lay down. I really appreciate you being here and have a wonderful day.